आपने देखा होगा अच्छे अच्छे लोगों के चेहरे पर से चमक चली गई।
आप लोग सब कुछ जानते हो और आप लोग कभी जिंदगी में गलती नहीं करते हो। सत्ता का खेल तो चलेगा, सरकारें आएंगी जाएंगी, पार्टियां बनेगी बिगड़ेगी, मगर ये देश रहना चाहिए, इस देश का लोकतंत्र मत रहना चाहिए।
Hello and welcome back to the second part of Two Sides of the Same Coin. The discussion with the agenda are extrajudicial killings sanctioned by the government and do they challenge the judiciary's authority? We hope you like the discussion ahead.
So I'll go on with it. From where I understand is that, just like Shrestha said, that these glorified cases of extrajudicial killing come into picture, it comes into scrutiny. But what about places where it was actually necessary to be? You have to understand, Shivam Pandey, that okay, in your opinion, there's no justification for killing people, and I think people like you are also the people who are in support for cancelling out of capital punishments. The thing is that you have to take into consideration that police are justified in some events. For example, as given in section 47, their justification lies, but when it comes to all these glorified cases, like Vikas Dubey's case, then it becomes a problem because the media will highlight it, and they'll try to highlight it. There'll be political oppression from the opposition. There'll be people questioning it. But what if it is actually justified for the police to kill that person, in a mind that that person might be trying to escape? A person who has done a crime proportionate to him being killed or having a judicial punishment which might be equivalent. What about that? Now here you talk about metaphysics of morality and Kant's conception of freedom of an individual, but you forget that you live in a world where there is rule of law, where law prevails and it justifies through its actions. Now even if you support judiciary and their procedure, you have to give the power to the executive also, because there's a separation of power. The judiciary cannot be a bully in every single mean. This is my take on it.
यार देखो, नहीं ठीक है, मैं हिंदी में स्विच कर रहा हूँ, ठीक है, क्योंकि कभी कभी मैं इंग्लिश खुद भी अच्छी नहीं बोल पाता हूँ, दूसरों को भी समझ में नहीं आती है, ठीक है। तो पॉइंट ये है, ऋषभ का क्वेश्चन तो मेरे को थोड़ा समझ में आ गया। अब जितना भी आया उसका आंसर ये है कि देखो, मेरे हिसाब से तो शरिया लॉ फॉलो होता है बहुत सारी हमारी ये सऊदीज में और इन सब कंट्रीज में, ठीक है। यहाँ पे स्ट्रिक्ट पेनल्टीज एंड स्ट्रिक्ट पनिशमेंट है ऐसी किसी भी एक्टिविटी के लिए, ऐसी किसी भी हरकत के लिए कह सकते हैं, जहाँ पे जैसे आपको हाथ पैर काट देते हैं और तुमको मार देते हैं, सूली चढ़ा देते हैं, फॉर एग्जाम्पल ऑफ दिस थिंग, राइट। हमारे यहाँ अगर तुम पीछे जाते हो, तुम और पीछे चले जाते हो, बिल्कुल हिस्ट्री में चले जाते हो, तो तुम देखोगे जब से इंडिपेंडेंस मिली, 74 ईयर्स ऑफ इंडिपेंडेंस हम सेलिब्रेट कर रहे हैं, इसमें क्राइम कम तो हुआ नहीं है, क्राइम तो बढ़ता ही जा रहा है। और जब क्राइम बढ़ता जा रहा है तो क्या उसे रोकने के लिए कि हमें कोई स्टेप नहीं लेना चाहिए? तो व्हाट आई फील contradictory to Shivam Pandey is that at some point of time, this is justified and this should be made justified. Reason being because there are number of criminals who are actually roaming around on the roads, and because of whom number of people are actually not able to get out of their homes. All right, and these people need to be punished, because since 74 years or even way back, the number of these cruel cases are increasing day by day. These are not decreasing in any state. You take Uttar Pradesh, you take Kerala, you take Kashmir, or you take Gujarat, you take Assam. At no single place these things are getting lessened and lessened or are decreasing at any point, at any rate, right? So हमें भी कोई strict action and strict steps लेना पड़ेगा. And why not? If we kill such people who deserve this, all right? 8 people went ahead to arrest Vikas Dubey, and he killed a CO, the circle officer, straight inside his head. He fired the bullet straight inside his head from ground zero, all right? So if a person becomes this cruel, why not the government should sanction his death warrant very per se? Why should we wait for judicial proceeding? What do you need? What proofs do you need?
Taking your point, sir.
My opinion.
Taking your point, sir, this question is also directed to Shrestha ma'am. Her 2 cents on this.
I would like to answer this in 2 parts. First, with regard to the consent jury that was mentioned, and second, where I think I differ from all 3 speakers, is how we are justifying extrajudicial killings, right? On the basis of the Kantian theory is very moralistic, and we need to understand that Kant says that everybody needs to be held accountable to the same standard of morality. So if you as a police officer or as a citizen are being held to a standard of morality that you cannot kill a person without there being a reason of self-defense, a public servant is also held to the same standard that you cannot kill a person unless there are few provisions that are mentioned legally. Unless all these provisions happen, you cannot kill a person, even if the person is an alleged criminal or you personally know a lot of evidence against that criminal, right? So the Kantian theory is established under extrajudicial killing. And second of all, the background of Kantian theory becomes very problematic if we apply it here. The background, the reason why Kant gave this theory, yes.
I would like to ask Shivam Pandey sir to say something to this, because I think he has something to say.
Okay, I'll answer and then Shivam could reply to it. Will that
Yeah,
be
yeah,
okay?
go ahead, Shrishta, you complete it. Yeah.
So it is problematic because the reason for which Kant gave his theory was different. He was answering to the bourgeois class, to the monarchy class, and based on that, the Kantian theory evolved based on the fact that everybody needs to be held accountable to the same standard of morality, which I think should not be applied here because that is a very problematic stance based on the other principles that are imbibed in the Kantian theory. Second, and this is where I differ from all three panelists, I think. Now, if you have killed someone in an extrajudicial killing, that act is not justified based on the character of the person you have killed, right? That person might be a wanted criminal in many countries, that person might have murdered or might have extorted a lot of people, but that never justifies why you killed him. What justifies the act of killing is the sanctions or is the legality that is mentioned in our constitution and other provisions, which state that in an act of self-defense or when you have to make an arrest of a person, you can do that. We need to understand that no provision or no loophole or practicality of the aspect justifies a person killing another person for no reason other than self-defense. So here I differ from all three. Even if there is if we say that the society perceives these extrajudicial killings as being right, we need to understand that the society's behavioral or emotional aspect needs to be kept out of a discussion such as this, which is academic in nature, and that is why these points of emotionality or the points of practicality that a criminal is not given justice.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Just one statement. This is not just an academic discussion. This also involves all the emotionality and the sentiment of the general public. Shivam sir, please continue.
Right. So, see, if you look at any theory for that matter, be not just Kant, but any other theorist as well, any other philosopher. See, any theory, it becomes difficult to actually implement any theory in its strictest format. It just depends on how you actually interpret it. That's where the whole application comes into picture. While I differ stating that Kant is very much applicable here because the theory of Kant's freedom actually comes from the very laid down, and he talked about the to be truly free or has true freedom when that particular person is able to govern their actions, be able to think and take actions without desire but with reason. That means you're able to go through the actual categorical imperatives that are embedded inside everybody's mind and body, and you actually reason with those categorical imperatives instead of going ahead with desire and trying to govern your action. That's where a person is considered to be free. Now the point is, what I try to tell you is that this is where I would say that Kant's entire theory comes into application, because there is a certain basic level that we all must adhere to. That is the very reason why we have law in the first place, and that's why we say that killing of any particular person is not the right thing. That does not mean that I am against capital punishment. No, I do not fall into the category of people who are against capital punishment. Capital punishment is that's a debate for another day. Okay, right now I'm talking about that a judicial proceeding, basically killing somebody by taking that law into your own hands, by giving that law the power that the judiciary has into the hands of the executive, into the hands of the police, and be able to do something like that. That's where there is a systematic failure that comes into picture that I'm trying to tell you. Be it any particular person, even when it is a glorified criminal.
At the same time, Shivam, how does it feel since we don't follow the strict theory of separation of power? There's obviously some interconnection between it, and there is the powers of all three are switched around with some, and it's not like judiciary has the complete power at this side. It's given in the law, given in
I
the
have a
But,
question for
CPC.
Shivam as
but
well.
judiciary
Shivam, I have a
definitely has the
question as
power
well.
to prove someone guilty or otherwise.
I
Yeah,
have a
so
question as well.
That power has not been given to anyone else, not even the government.
Shivam, I have a
So,
question as well. So
yes.
what if the police they do not act directly but they conspire with some other entity to kill a person? For example, it was said it is a theory that Munna Bajrangi was killed inside the prison by another prison mate, but again it was conspired by the police and the state, as sanctioned by the state. So do you believe that police actually conspiring with another entity or another person to kill another person will also amount to extrajudicial killing? Police not as an individual, but police be the state,
The state
the
conspiring,
police, the whole police. I'm not talking about one police personnel, right? So the whole police system. That's what I'm talking about.
the whole police system trying to conspire to actually kill somebody else
Through somebody else.
through somebody else.
Yeah. Will
No,
it also
again,
amount in the
Criminalization of the institutions of the state. Inherent criminalization or turning of criminalization of institutions of the state, which should not have been purporting acts like this that Rohan has given as his example.
now,
I would like to just say that the discussion as run the time goes, it was going really well, and a lot of really good points were put up. But now we have to move on to the concluding remarks, and I would like to start with Daksh sir's concluding remarks, and then the order will go Daksh sir, then Rohan sir, then Shrestha ma'am, and then Shivam sir. Please continue.
See, as firstly, I would say that it was a good discussion that we had, and I have high regards for all the three panelists, and it was well moderated. But the whole point here is that extrajudicial killings cannot be defined. It's not been defined by law as well, and our interpretation of extrajudicial killings is only when we consider these glorified scenarios which have been given in media. We don't fully understand what purview of the or what moment that police might have actually done it. It's only that in these glorified scenarios we try to question them, scrutinize them. Also, at the same time, when you take NHRC and the court taking magistrate taking suo motu action, it is very rare these days. It doesn't happen quite frequently. The NHRC is also quite stagnant with their its approach, and it's mostly redundant. So now we need to understand that there's some sort of authority that the parliament has also given to the police. For example, by these two laws that were mentioned, and it gives the power in scenarios where police can justify it, and obviously police justifies it. It's not like what Shivam is talking about is completely unfair, because in the end the police, they do the paperwork, they document it, they try to prove and justify why they did it, and the magistrate would obviously scrutinize on that scenario. You only your whole opinion is just formulated on this one section of glorified cases which have a lot of political backing and oppression from the opposition. Now, this is my closing remark, and I'm glad to be part of this panel.
Rohan sir,
Yes,
please.
so another ambit of this discussion whether extrajudicial killings are sanctioned by the government or are they are challenged to the judiciary. I believe yes, as Daksh said, and in few glorified cases, yes, that they do are sanctioned by the state government and they directly challenge the judicial proceedings and the judiciary in particular when we say this, right? Another thing we need to what I believe or I like to conclude over here is that when we say that why these killings happen or why do these people actually pretend to do these things, we need to think. What I suggest is that we need to have more strictness in this all judicial process, basically in the process, because the punishment under the law are very grievous. The punishments are very grievous. They give you life sentence or they just like give you death penalty and everything. But we need to understand. We need to improve the process. The procedure established by law needs to be improvised because then only the general public and the state authorities may have enough faith in the judiciary to actually go on and take a case into the legal proceeding or into the legal trial. Because if that will not happen, if that rectification does not happen, these things will happen. And thus, I will like to correct you that these things do keep on taking place every day under the name of fake encounters or fake murders. These things happen every day. Every day one innocent person dies somewhere on the other side of this country and police justifies it just because, and they're able to do this is because of the loopholes established by law itself. And these loopholes have been established by law to actually defend them. And they do not only defend them, but they go on till an extent where they can say that an innocent person is a terrorist, and a terrorist is an innocent person, right? So this is what we need to rectify and we need to improvise upon. Thank you.
Right, Shrestha ma'am, please.
We need to understand that the way extrajudicial killings have been panning out is a long drawn process of failure of the judiciary, of failure of NHRC in delivering whatever duties were given upon them. We need to understand that when a legal system is in place, how that legal system pan out is a complete reflection of the society's realities. That is why we need to understand the emotional aspects, practical aspects of how extrajudicial killings or what intentions are behind extrajudicial killings are very important because they show us what the society's realities are, and based on this, the judiciary needs to pan out all the facts that are present in front of it and not judge what is right and wrong, but tell us practically how it has failed and how it needs to correct itself. So, if you have to take a thought with you home, you need to take the last question that was asked by Rohan sir as to what will you categorize as an extrajudicial killing? What process do you think should be put under the scrutiny of morality and what process should not be put under the scrutiny of morality? Because at the end of the day, every law, even the act that murder is illegal, can be put under the scrutiny of morality in changing dynamics of the society. So at the end of the day, if I have to put forth an ideation, leaving apart the emotional portion of what the society feels, if the society overall is encouraging people to indulge in extrajudicial killings, it is an alarm for us stating how badly we as a legal system have failed in deliverance of our duties, that people do not mind deaths of certain innocent alleged criminals, and they are justifying this based on how justice has been delivered in the society for a long drawn period. That's about it. Manoneet, you did a great job, and I am thankful that I was a part of such a great panel.
Shivam sir, please.
Okay. Firstly, I'm really happy to see how some of the my co-panelists have actually turned and given their concluding statements. It's really nice to see all of those things. But however, I mean, if you're really justifying something as obscene as an extrajudicial killing, and like Shrestha has said, that it is a reminder of eventually it is a reminder of how the legal system has actually failed to stand up to its standards, is why this something like this that's the whole reason why we are actually sitting together and discussing something like this, and whether this should be justified or not. The reason why is because the legal fraternity has actually failed to come up to its standards. That's why I said that this is nothing but just a reminder the systematic failure, and we should, rather than justifying something that is an obscene thing, instead of trying to live the way Daksh lives his life by rationalizing the obscene into palatable, instead of making this obscenity into something very palatable, we should rather focus on the real issue that's there. That is, why is this particular obscene thing coming up in front of us? That is why this entire idea of extrajudicial killings is something I do not support. I do not think it can ever be justified. All the laws that have actually been laid down that people may say that justifies extrajudicial killings, be it Section 46 of CRPC, be it Section 92 of the IPC, be it other sections of the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, be it any other section. The point is that all of them are construed in the right manner in order to bring down, to tell you that eventually if there is a person who dies behind the bar, that is without having a proper trial, that happens, and if somebody can get away with it because you have a defense, but that does not give you a right to actually take that thing and do something like that and then take it up as a defense, because there's a difference between a right and a defense, right? So we need to really understand that and implement that in the right and the exact way that it's supposed to be implemented. That's where we all are falling apart. That's where the legal fraternity is falling apart, and that's why these things are seems to be justifiable or seems to be palatable. But that's not what this entire society is supposed to be about. That's not why judicial system. Even though I'm talking, that's not why judicial system is there in the place, right? Now, also,
Please no
lastly, I'd like to
crosstalks in the closing remarks. So sorry.
This
yeah,
is
so
the biggest
I'll just
closing remark I've ever heard in my life.
I know, right? I know, right? Because I'm Mr. Wonderful. So I get
You
20
don't care.
seconds more to actually complete this. Thank you. So lastly, I would say that the reason why we have a judiciary in picture and then there is a separation that's been done amongst the pillars is, and then there is also a system that tells you in order to bring up that transparency. The point is that we're forgetting all of that entire system. We're saying that there are loopholes in it. We're saying that we have all of these things, but at the same time, we're saying that we can justify something that is going out of that particular system. We'll not follow all of that. We'll try to rather justify something that is completely different. That too based on what? Based on nothing but just hero worshipping, just because a large population says something like that. So that's where the entire thing problem comes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. There are some questions that have come later and are pointed towards each of you. So, without conversing amongst yourselves, I would like to ask you these questions. There is for Rohan sir, a question is: does extrajudicial killings, which is being exercised by authorities, that is law enforcement agencies, uh, is it uh, is it attacking the basis, the idea of human rights? Do you think this generalization of the extrajudicial killings goes against the democratic policy of the country? So I think
Under consideration subjective. It is subjective to the situation which arose, and such person has to take such kind of step to actually go on and kill another person. Is subjective in nature. That what were the circumstances, like under what condition that person was. So all these things, and I don't believe on all. I am, if personally, I don't believe in all this shit, because I believe that if somebody has done some grievous thing, should be punished in a grievous way, either by law or either by the people enforcing the law.
Thank you, sir. Shrestha ma'am, why the old colonial system of Police Act 1881 is still having its relevancy in the modern context? Is it not responsible for the legislature, especially the Home Department, who are responsible to look after the international security and law enforcement agencies?
Shresha, that's a UPSC paper, mains paper question. You can exempt it, okay? If you're not prepared with a UPSC question, it's all right. I understand. Just
So you need to understand the background for which the Police Act had taken place, and I think that is the basis of the question. The Police Act in the colonial times was made such that the police could overpower the public based on whatever principles the colonial masters wanted the public to follow, right? And the question, I think, the basis of the questions comes from a place as to why such a position is still being continued. This is a very procedural, logistical convenience that had taken place. That a lot of statutes were taken as it is if their provisions were procedurally right to function in a country. So, if you wish that the legislature changes these provisions, there are two things that you as an individual could do. Number one, you could question these provisions, as has been questioned numerous times. A lot of legal provisions, including the Constitution itself, has been questioned and has been changed. So, if you believe that the Act or a certain provision is not, it does not have a constitutional basis, you question it. Secondly, as I have already mentioned, the opinion of the society, the morality of what is right and wrong, what the society, public as large perceives, is what is imbibed in the legal system of our present times. Our judiciary has been dynamic in accepting the ideas which are supposed to be illegal in retrospective effect, but then it has changed these legalities. So, if you are questioning the Police Act itself, you need to understand that and this has already been mentioned in the entire panel discussion, if the police has an upper hand with regard to certain aspects of, say, extrajudicial killings or their procedures, then these can be curbed by identifying these loopholes, by active participation of the judiciary, of institutions like NHRC, which has been put into place to question these very things in the first place.
Thank you, ma'am. For Daksh sir, there's a question that a person who is such a dreaded criminal in the society, and some people are so nefarious that they are famously dangerous. So, do these people even deserve fundamental rights? This is a question based more on the emotionality of it and not pure facts.
I will just interrupt, Manoni. I'm already afraid I might have to leave. I have some work. I'm really sorry. It was really great to attend the meeting alongside Shivam, Shrestha, and Daksh. Manonit, you have been a very good moderator, very
Thank you for
decent
attending, sir.
moderator. We haven't found one since long in the college itself. A moderator like you have been very patient listening to us. Thank you so much, and the whole team, Vanshika and Shruti as well. I have one single suggestion that when you give a topic for panel discussion, when you want to restrict it, as a law student, try to restrict it on complete legal basis. And when you want to open it completely, because as Shrestha said that this topic, it does not include emotional aspect, it includes more of practicality, because when you talk about whether it is sanctioned by government or it is challenged in the judiciary, you will have to talk about the practical phases of everything. You cannot go into the emotional terms. When you want us to go into emotional or other speakers to go into emotional terms, you need to have that topic to be such a generalized topic that we can touch the emotional aspects as well. Alright.
Daksh sir, sorry for the interruption. Do these people who are such dreaded people that the common people are so scared of them, do they even deserve fundamental rights? So the question essentially should not be do they even deserve fundamental rights? Do they deserve the mercy that is being asked of the system for them? You're on mute, sir.
Okay, I have audacity to, commit such crimes and have such questions in the first place. But since they do, the answer is that it's a society. We're people. Even though we make, we have our bad deeds. We a lot of people lack morality. A lot of people lack empathy and compassion towards other mates in the society. I would refer Shivam also as one of them. But they do deserve their fundamental rights. You can't take it away. And as per the case laws also, it's pretty obvious that a basic structure that has been set cannot be taken away from the people. Neither of the three powers or the branches of our country can take it away from these people. Even though these people are the reason why we fail as a society, but also we need to respect the the factor of humanity also coming into play. So with this would be my answer.
Thank you, sir. For Shivam, sir, this is the last question. The extrajudicial killing of there is another provision that has been given in the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967, where it allows for the exercise of indefinite powers against a member of terrorist group, irrespective of its activity. What are your views upon this?
The use of power, again, this I could say, or some people would agree that this could be considered as one of the loopholes of the legislature, where there is not a clear definition of what would be unrestricted power, what is the real meaning behind how do we use this ambit of what kind of power is supposed to be used. That's where I say that this is another problem that we need to rather focus on. That's the problem. Okay. Now, with regards to my personal opinion about this, definitely in order to maintain an order in the society, certain power is supposed to be given to certain authorities in order to exercise those powers. This is prevention of unlawful act, and this particular provision is similarly is nothing but the same thing. Right. Now, the point is that here what needs to be well defined is, first they need to really set up a system in order to how do they really define as to what is a terrorist activity and what is a terrorist group, to whom, against whom you're going to use such a power, because eventually we're talking about people, we're talking about humans, right? If you're using a power against humans, and why such power is being used, why is it that we've classified them to be different from the others who do not deserve those kind of protections that other people deserve? The reason that needs to be really clarified. And if that clarification does not come from the legislature, it gives a chilling effect. It gives a problematic situation because people are not aware of what to do now. That's where the problem arises, where sometimes there's a superstition of power, they supersede the power, ultra virus acts comes into picture, and judicial killings like things happen.
I actually want to interject and put just 1.4 with regard to this question, and there was a question put forth by Daksh with regard to shoot on sight orders. We need to understand, if a person is termed as a criminal or if there is an order passed with regard to shoot on sight, it is based on evidence that is taken over a period of time. Evidence, and then there is paperwork with regard to both of these procedures. That is why इसको please extrajudicial killings या encounters के साथ confuse मत करो, because a typical encounter is not based on evidence or paperwork.
Similar, okay, but extrajudicial killings are justified after they have killed a person with the paperwork and documents. So it would.
Abuse is wrong. The system is not wrong. Abuse of the system, as we already mentioned.
Exactly. So this is the thing. When
Don't club them together. My point was being, don't club this act or shoot on sight orders with a typical encounter.
So whatever I wrote about the system and abuse of power is supposed to be different. I didn't mean to even club them in the first place. But I get your point, Shrestha.
Thank you so much for the panelists for coming. Daksh Dhawan sir, Shrestha Garge ma'am, Shivam Pandey sir, and Rohan Pathak sir, who had to leave early. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for putting forth your views. There were clear two sides. One side that said that this is a necessary evil, essentially, which has to be there in the society to because we can't always follow due process and expect fast fair judgments from the system. And the other side clearly said that this is clearly unconstitutional and should not be glorified in any way whatsoever. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and we are really, really grateful for you to have come here for our very first discussion. We were not prepared for it in any way. We asked for a half hour. We asked for a half hour, and you are here for the last 1 hour. So I think that's one of the things that we have to look into. The discussion will run for more than we pegged it for. Thank you so much.
So we are very thankful to the panel for having touch, being in touch constantly, even before and throughout the entire project. And the panel has been really supportive and cooperative at every crucial point. Plus, Anshveer and I, on the behalf of the entire Legitlex team, extend our heartfelt gratitude towards each one of you present here, and also to Rohan sir. The two sides of the same coin team is highly thankful to both our mentors, which is Mr. Ali Avtar Mirza and Shivam Sharma. Without them, it would have been impossible to take up a project like this. We hope to have all of you guys again in further discussions as well. And yeah,